Well, here we are again, nearing the end of the year with just a few days left. This might easily be a time of regrets because of things still left undone that we didn't accomplish this year. Or we could slip into melancholy because of the short days and the long nights and the clouds and the cold and the blazing autumn that we've left far behind by now, the trees having more than 3/4 of the way fallen into bare branches in the bleakness of winter. We could just be celebrating nothing but the blahs every year this time of year. We could do that, except for Christmas. What the trees in our yards lack in greenery this time of year is easily made up for in the holly and the ivy decking the halls in every store and every house. And we welcome the eternal nights this time of year so we can light the yards and neighborhoods just that much longer every evening. And who remembers the regrets of the year past with wishes of good cheer everywhere? Christmas is a time to make merry and make memories. A lot of the memories I have of my parents and almost all the memories I have of my grandparents were made at Christmas. So make sure you make some memories for somebody this year. Our program is called A Mississippi Carol, and we call this year's edition The Stories of Christmas Past. Much of how we celebrate the holidays this year is based on what's gone on in the holidays in the past. Traditions is what we call that. Decorating a tree, a family meal, hoping Santa will come, going to church, going to Grandma's house. Not that you have to do everything every year, but it's a pattern we go by, the memory of what was so fun about this time of year in years past. Sometimes it all needs to be brand new. And other times, we need to reflect. And for the next hour, we invite you to bake a batch of cookies or pour some hot chocolate, sit down in front of the TV, and remember years past with us. Hi, I'm Walt Grayson. Welcome back to our annual holiday presentation, A Mississippi Carol. Now, this is a special year for us. This is our 5th year to put this show together, and we'd like to present some of our favorite stories from years past. Now, the way A Mississippi Carol came into being, it was around the end of October, first part of November, 5 years ago, that I came to WJTV. And as I was chatting with our general manager, Jeff Guy, he mentioned, "You know, Walt, I've always wanted to do a local Christmas show." And he asked if I'd like to do that. And I said, well, of course I would. And look, we have over a year to put it together. And then Jeff looked at me and he said, "No, I mean I want us to do a local Christmas special this year." To which I replied, "But that's less than 2 months away." To which Jeff answered, "Great, I knew you'd catch the spirit of it and run with it. Way to go." And he was right. His enthusiasm was infectious. I picked up on it right away. But what to do? Well, the entire creative team put on their thinking caps, and ideas started flowing. And right away, New Stage Theater in Jackson let us use their stage for the very first segment we ever produced. And it occurred to me that the holidays have affected our culture to the extent that Christmas has its own vocabulary, with words that have additional shades of meanings assigned to them by the holidays. So then, this is our very first piece that we ever produced from 5 years ago, and we call it The Words of Christmas. Were it not for Christmas, the words we would not have, and expressions that would take paragraphs to otherwise elucidate, we can sum up in mere syllables. For example, Ho, ho, ho would be no more or less than the amount of manual labor it would take to clean a rather weedy flower bed or garden. And season's greetings would be utterly ridiculous without the season. Want more? Okay, there are thousands of them. Well, maybe not thousands. I don't want to be put on Santa's naughty list for exaggerating the number of Christmas terms we have. Not this close to when old Santa's going to be coming and checking that list twice himself. And speaking of Santa, the North Pole would have no more meaning than the South Pole, which would have little more meaning than a light pole, if it weren't for Santa's factory and his elves making toys there. And we might go a lifetime and never even hear about elves if it weren't for Christmas. And Blitzen, just a word you'd use to try to cheat playing Scrabble. Grinch, something you do to your back when you twist it the wrong way. As a child, I'd imagine our first real introduction to angels came from the Christmas story, as did frankincense and myrrh, which nobody gets or gives for Christmas anymore. Like the oranges and nuts and candy canes your grandparents or their grandparents said was all they ever got for Christmas. What we would miss if it weren't for Christmas. No halls would be decked. There would be no Noel. No one would ever have argued over whether the correct pronunciation is poinsettia or poinsettia. Reindeer would forever simply be caribou. And jingle bells probably wouldn't. And we'd never learned any Spanish beyond uno, dos, tres, cuatro, and what's that other one? But because of Christmas, we all know Feliz Navidad. Jesus, wise men, manger, stockings, wassail, all have a greater meaning because of Christmas. We'd never know what a sugar plum is. What is it, by the way? And fruitcakes would get no more respect than they actually do. But we still pick one up at Christmas to give to someone else. Would Scrooge be as awful? Would snow be as wonderful if it weren't for Christmas? And would we wish good tidings to anyone? Would we wish for anything if it weren't for Christmas? Hey, fruitcake. Well, another one of the elements that we've had with us since the very beginning is The Mouse Before Christmas. Now, Opie Cooper wrote this, and then he handed it off to me and says, here, can you just do the narration on it? And of course, I might have added a word or two here and there, but it all ended up the first few years as a segmented piece that we closed out each segment with The Mouse Before Christmas. And I think last year we decided, hey, why don't we just run it all together? And so we ran it all together at the end of the show. But we decided, since it is one of our favorite clips, we'd run it all together at the beginning of the show. So here it is, The Mouse Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Well, actually, the mouse wasn't stirring. He was mixing, in fact. Christmas muffins, to be quite exact. Something was wrong with his holiday batter, so he rushed to his cookbook to see what was the matter. He'd forgotten to buy milk. He had none around. But on the night before Christmas, he knew where some could be found. Ever so quiet, as is true to his ilk, our little mouse friend went in search of some milk. He slipped under my chair and stopped by my bed. In a sleep-deprived state, I nearly stepped on his head. Though he wasn't squished flat, he did run into our cat. Then startled old bear who launched him through the air. The powdery snow, formed with care by our house, gave a hint of a beard on the jowls of our mouse, when what with his chilled rodent eyes had he spied but cookies for Santa and milk right beside. With the milk now in sight, our mouse was determined. No, nothing could stop our milk-craving vermin. He tugged hard on the sash, stuck his head in and squeezed, popped through the frame, and landed hard in our tree. Atop of an ornament he fell to the ground, when down the chimney St. Nick came with the bound. Well, you may love stockings and the gifts that they hide, but I'd wager you wouldn't if you were hiding inside. Now chocolates, now taffies, now striped candy canes. On his head, on his feet, down upon him they rained. He burst out of the sock and bounced high off a ball, grasped lights like a hero, then swung to a wall? Dazed, bruised, and beaten, our mouse opened his eyes, and right there, right before him, sat his much-wanted prize. Sad and dejected, our quiet little mouse, depressed and defeated, walked back to his house. An association, an affiliation, I guess I should say, that we made a little bit later on, and I think is one of the best things, if not the best thing that we've ever done with our Christmas program, is inviting Marshall Ramsey to come along and do some illustrations for us, which is very helpful because sometimes you have a story that you just don't have pictures for, there's no video or anything like that, and so you just call up Marshall, hey, can you draw a picture of so-and-so, and then the next thing you've got it. One of those things that Marshall did for us is something that we ended up calling our Marshall Ramsey Christmas cards. We scattered them throughout the show, and here's the first one of those right now. When I was younger, I used to doubt Santa could really make it around the world in one night. He'd have to fly at the speed of light to do that. Youngsters think like that, you know. It was later that I realized that Santa flies way faster than the speed of light. He goes at the speed of thought. Why, even in my puny brain, in a blink I can travel back to my childhood, or into the future, or to Alpha Centauri, or any other star. I don't recommend that, they're hot. But I can be in Paris or London or in my living room, in my mind, in a flash. And if I can do it, I know the old boy himself has it down pat. He's had a lot more practice. You know what's the most fun? Blinking yourself into Santa's sleigh with him while you're trying to fall asleep on Christmas Eve. Try it in your mind this year, but don't let him catch you. It's Christmas Eve, and what do I see? I think it's old Santa waving back at me. He left me exactly what I wanted this year. Well, close enough that I'm full of good cheer. What a magic time, what a magic night when good wishes are delivered by reindeer in flight. Would that we could be Santa to those whom he missed, for whatever reason they were left off his list. We know that it happens, we don't know just why. Some Christmas seasons he passes some by. Maybe, oh maybe, our dear Santa Claus left a gap in his route, perhaps just because he knew we'd been blessed this year more than some, and thought we could say thanks by passing some of it along. Flights of fancy. Isn't that one of the advantages of the holiday season? To not only unchain our imaginations that we seem to need to keep in check most of the time, lest we get caught up in ourselves and perhaps overstep our boundaries the rest of the year, but let our imaginations fly. If they can't fly during Christmas and the holidays, what do we have imaginations for? You decorate your living rooms and your yards and your houses and cars for what? Do you even know? To let yourself out of the box we hide in 11 months out of the year and become one with the season for December. Fly. Soar into the sky that's inside you this season. There'll be plenty of time to come back to Earth after the first of the year. Thought it was a legend, but then I saw it for myself. My grandfather told all us grandkids about it one Christmas Eve. I thought it was just a story to entertain us, make us excited about Christmas, as if we needed coaxing. He said he had seen it, but only once. But he had heard about it from his grandpa. How all the animals in the world, at exactly midnight on Christmas Eve, just as it changes to Christmas Day, stop, and in their own way, worship the Christ child. The cattle low a prayer. The deer are quiet and still, but sing in their hearts. Birds chirp with glee, cats meow, kittens mew, coyotes howl from the hilltops as if it were every full moon of the year all put together. And I saw it out my front window. There on the street, Mr. ML singing bass, banjo on tenor, Pip doing a grand alto, and Sam singing soprano, as everyone who's seen it knows a cat can do so well. Singing from their hearts, praising God in the highest and wishing peace, goodwill to men, and I suppose they mean women too, on earth, and I suppose they also mean the ones about to go to the moon soon. Peace and goodwill. I saw it myself, so I know it's real. Listen in your heart at midnight on Christmas Eve, and you'll hear it too. Sleigh bells, snowfall, church bells, hope. A light shining in the darkness. That's what we carry from this season into the new year. Lit from the inner fires we warm ourselves by. One winter's night. Coming up, more of Mississippi holiday traditions and a little bit more of Marshall Ramsey's Christmas magic. As a Mississippi Carol, the stories of Christmas past continues. So much of what we expect of Christmas present is the culmination of all of our Christmas past. So we figured we needed to do a piece about a Christmas memory from childhood. Maybe my childhood. Of course, the problem is, I have no video of my childhood. But the solution, Marshall Ramsey, like I mentioned before. So I wrote a story, Marshall drew an illustration of it, and it's interesting that even though my white hair has come with age, I had brown hair when I was a kid, Marshall couldn't picture me with anything but white hair. So I'm the kid in this story with white hair. But even at that, it was still a picture, and television has motion. So Obie Cooper put the motion magic into the sketch magic and put all that with a Christmas memory of mine, and it comes out like this. My Christmas story would be populated with aunts and uncles and cousins, set at grandmother's rambling old farmhouse. It was honeycomb with cubbies and closets, excellent for hide and seek, and the air was always heavy with flavors drifting out of the kitchen. Bacon and coffee and biscuits at breakfast, and smoke from grandmother's old wood stove. She kept her wood stove even after REA came through and they put an electric range beside it, but she preferred to cook with wood, a tie to her past, I guess. And now it's a tie to my past, too. The living room had a huge coal heater, had a little mica window in the door so you could see the flame. It stood out from the wall far enough that behind it was another good hiding place. We never got there until after dark because we had to come from all the way across the state. It was more than a journey in miles, it was a journey in culture, from sophisticated little Athens of Mississippi, Greenville, where I grew up, to the foothills of the Appalachians, a place so isolated from the rest of the world they still had Gaelic phrases in their vocabulary when I was a kid. I didn't know it then, but I do now. That's another part of who I found out I am. I had an uncle who knew everything. One Christmas Eve, he pointed out a bright star for us kids and told us it was the one the wise men followed in the east. It was Venus setting in the west. The elderly neighbors from down the road would drop in on Christmas Eve, he with his booming voice, and she was a tiny little lady who always wore a bonnet and was so hard of hearing she never heard anything we kids said until we got older and our voices changed. She always baked tea cakes for us cousins, whether she could hear us or not. Santa came that night. We awoke to a cold house and the smell of coffee and bacon on Christmas morning. I was very apprehensive about old St. Nick finding me across the state from my house, but the old boy did well for no GPS back then. I actually remember some of the presents I got, not important because what we got for Christmas was nothing compared to what our elders gave us. A sense of who we are and where we fit in, and the stories of who all had come along to try to uproot us and how we survived as a family. What a warm, cold house on Christmas morning. Decorations are an integral part of the holidays and Christmas. From a sprig of holly to acres of lights and figures, decorations make the season. Perhaps all this light business this time of the year grew from the rituals of making the long winter nights brighter. And the first of those lights that could be exclusively a Christmas decoration might possibly be the Christmas tree. Now we have Marshall Ramsey's Christmas card about Christmas trees, and then we're going to follow that up with our history of Christmas trees. The tradition of the Christmas tree predates pretty much every other Christmas tradition we have. All of our other traditions orbit around the tree. Decorations go on the tree, presents go under the tree, and Santa adds his touch to the pile under the tree on Christmas Eve. I think if I had to give up all the traditions of the holidays except one, I'd keep the tree. When memory of almost all the toys I got for Christmas as a child have faded away, I can still picture the trees in our living room, and me sitting beside it in one particular Christmas Eve, and Grandpa, who never smiled and hardly ever talked, chuckled at me and said, "Sure is a long time till morning, ain't it, son?" And it was. And as I sit by our tree on Christmas Eve this year, it will still be a long time until morning. That's part of the fun of the tree.
Christmas tree, oh Christmas tree, your leaves are so unchanging. Oh Christmas tree, your leaves are so unchanging.
What more recognizable icon of Christmas in the home could there be other than the Christmas tree? Now, boughs of evergreens have been brought inside houses long before Christmas ever existed. It was part of the rituals that surrounded the winter solstice, the time of the year when the days are the shortest and gloomiest and the nights are the longest and coldest in the northern hemisphere. The evergreens spruced up the place, you might say, in the most drab time of the year. Well, lots of pagan practices were adopted by Christians, especially when it was evident that people weren't going to quit doing them even after they converted. So either he really did it, or it's a popular story that endorses the use of Christmas trees by Christians that says that Martin Luther, while walking through a German forest mulling over a sermon, looked up through the boughs of the evergreens and saw the brilliant stars twinkling through them and was so moved by their beauty that he immediately chopped down an evergreen and stood it up inside his home and decorated it with twinkling candles, birthing the Christmas tree. Well, Martin Luther or someone in Germany did something like that because that's where Christmas trees came from, Germany. But they weren't universally popular, even shunned and preached against, along with any decorating or singing of carols by Puritans in the New England colonies. So how did Christmas trees and decorating in general overcome the stigma of being evil and become popular? Well, lots of historians who would know these things say it was because of an illustration published in 1848 of Queen Victoria and her family standing around a decorated Christmas tree. After that, everybody had to have one. Down to today, my family marks the highlight of the year by hanging a new ornament commemorating it. Other people have brand new themes every year. Some trees are simple, a few lights and ornaments that have been around for years. Others elaborate that take weeks to decorate. And when you finish, admire it. Then visualize it on Christmas morning with all the love wrapped up in shining paper and colorful ribbons that'll be tucked under it, and realize that those old pagans of old weren't far off the mark when they brought in evergreen boughs to ward off the gloominess of this time of the year. The tree may be the basis of decorations, but decorations have expanded from, just the living room corner to entire buildings and more. And a couple of those have become Jackson traditions. We visit them when a Mississippi Carol, Stories of Christmas Past, continues. Hey, welcome back. This is our 5th anniversary presentation of A Mississippi Carol. And we started from scratch that first year, and in a period of about a month, we came up with enough Christmas and holiday content to fill up a full hour. And then we've added to those stories over the next 3 years until we have quite a selection to choose from this year. And that's exactly what we decided to do, is to pick out some of our favorites for a retrospective. Now, we left you back before the break with Christmas trees. And so we pick up this segment with the obvious outgrowth of that, and that's whole houses and whole buildings, halls decked to the ceilings with decorations. Here's a couple of buildings in Jackson you may be familiar with. We'll start with the new Capitol. Well, the building that gives Jackson, the capital city, its identity, the state capitol building, is decked out for the holidays every year. And lights is an appropriate theme for this building. The new Capitol was built in 1903, and it was electrically lit from the very beginning with over 4,000 light fixtures, used not only for illumination, but also as a part of the striking architecture of the building. There's work going on all the time in this building, but it's also open for tours year-round. But, as with everything else, it's a little more special during the holidays. Well, not only is the new Capitol decked out every year, but very closely tied to that is another building just right down the street, and that's the Governor's Mansion, which is perhaps the first building in Jackson that ever had a Christmas tree. It's really kind of hard to put a finger on exactly when the first Christmas tree was put up in Jackson. Now, Vicksburg has it nailed down. 1851, Mahalia Roach had a holiday ball at her house, and they had the very first Christmas tree in Vicksburg. Now, here at the new Capitol, it was built in 1903. Perhaps they've had a Christmas tree here since 1903. But maybe it was at the Governor's Mansion. We've got the second oldest Governor's Mansion in the nation. Now, whether it was first or not, they really deck the halls over there now.
first family moved into the home in early 1842, so we're approaching 180 years of being at the Governor's Mansion. We're also the second oldest continuously occupied executive residence in the country. Virginia has us beat, but we're second. So every family since 1842 has lived in the home. The mansion has just managed to remain untouched through even war, downtown progress. This is prime real estate in the middle of downtown Jackson, so there have been several times that people have actually pondered getting rid of the mansion, but fortunately, ladies groups and citizens of Jackson and the state have always stepped in and made sure that this house was saved for future generations.
The Mississippi Governor's Mansion is not only the home of the current first family of the state, the original front portion of the mansion is a museum, open to the public year-round, but especially during the holidays.
The family still entertains here, just like we've been doing since 1842, but we do offer public tours as well. At least since the 1980s, we've had holiday events available, so I would say at least 1980, when the Winters were here, we had our first open house, so to speak. Each family who lives in the mansion selects who decorates the home and selects a theme if they so choose. This year we're focusing on the joy of Christmas for children. The decorations this year feature fun things, a lot of trains, a lot of toys, fun things for kids.
The children were nestled, all stuck in their beds.
My favorite is upstairs in the cream bedroom. We have a Santa Claus that reads, "'Twas the night before Christmas," and there's a lot of retro ornaments up there as well.
The mansion is one of the stops on the early December candlelight holiday tour put on by the Archives and History Department, and this year incorporated into the Capitol Light celebration, kicking off Jackson's bicentennial. And every year the mansion is a spectacular showcase of Christmas decorations.
Christmas here is always it's a busy time for the family and the public as well, and staff. We have lots of events, a lot of people, a lot of laughter, a lot of joy, and to me that's what really stands out. It's a joyous time to be in the home, and anyone who hasn't visited the mansion, this is the best time of year to do so because you get to see all these wonderful decorations.
Over the years, we've explored not only decorations, but Christmas pageants and holiday cooking and mixing holiday spirits, all searching for the essence of what the holiday is all about. All of what we've seen so far are elements of it, and they certainly add to it. But here's a suggestion of what we're really trying to get to with Christmas. Well, lest we should ever forget, this is what Christmas really is, the Christmas that we've made fit into our lifestyles here in the 21st century, setting religious aspects aside. The practicality of Christmas, after all the decorating, all the gathering, all the shopping, is no more nor less than the look of amazement and wonder on the face of a child as he or she contemplates the possibilities looming before them. An innocent time when belief in wishes is not only condoned, but encouraged. Christmas is for children because they're the only ones who have the ability to make the season last long enough to fool with. Some years I feel left behind by Christmas. The day is here and gone before I even know it. Not like it was back when we were in school. First payoff back then was a 2-week break from classes. And if that weren't enough, bam, right in the middle of it came Christmas. A time when Santa picked out just the right gifts for me, like little toy cameras and toy microphones that became real after I grew up and started using them every day at work. And that makes work a reminder of childhood and Christmas, and that's the best gift I ever got. But that's Christmas. A time we've created that says, what's wrong with dreams coming true? What's wrong with good and laughter and excitement and anticipation? And maybe a little jitters on the inside, wondering if Santa will really remember me again this year. But what us ex-children need to realize is this is Christmas. The anxiety on those small faces. And anyone who won't plop down on Santa's knee needn't apply for the benefits of the day anymore. Now, once we pass out of Toyland, we take on the even more enviable role of becoming benefactor of the day. I mean, Santa and all his beardness is very limited in all practicality in fulfilling the wonderment that's beaming in these eyes. The only way this equation will be satisfied is for us old folks to become exactly what we secretly wanted to be all along. I mean, which one of us didn't want to grow up and become Santa's helper anyway? Well, here we are. And we can make wishes come true. And that's the reality of Christmas. Christmas is for children, that's for sure, but the children of Jackson in Mississippi got a present during the holidays that's not only for Christmas, but for year-round, and not just this year, but from now on. It's the LaFleur's Bluff Playground. Shaded areas with all sorts of things to swing on and climb on and in and around.
This is the place that Mississippi plays.
You are standing amidst a 30,000 square foot playground complete with 80 different individual play activities.
Particularly proud of the fact that of the 80 exhibits out here, I think 73 are for children that may be challenged.
A pre-Christmas Christmas gift for the whole state.
This park is just fantastic. It's the best park I've ever seen for what it's designed to do, and especially I like the shady areas and all the different devices. It's a miracle. It's a miracle for Mississippi to create something like this. It really is.
The LaFleur's Bluff Playground is right beside another Mississippi treasure, the Mississippi Children's Museum. This is a premier project brought to life by the Junior League of Jackson. But the museum really comes to life during the holidays, when it's turned into the Polar Express.
It originated because children are very, very fascinated with the North Pole. I have gone down the slide. Children's reaction has been wonderful, and what's wonderful for us are children that have never visited before. Their eyes, I mean, it's just magical. Our beautiful tree, the beautiful exhibits, but what's even more wonderful are children who've been here maybe for 3 years and who've grown up with us, and their excitement about coming back each year and bringing siblings and cousins and their grandparents, and it's become a memory, just like we have memories of special holiday experiences. We feel very special and honored that families, that this is now becoming part of their holiday memory.
Would you like a ticket?
Welcome back to A Mississippi Carol, shows of Christmas past. You know, sooner or later, sometimes as soon as right after the Thanksgiving dishes have cleared, sometimes as late as Christmas Eve if you have a lot of self-control, but sooner or later in the holiday season, the question comes to all of us, what am I going to get for Christmas? Now, for the last several decades, it was assumed that we'd get something for Christmas, but a few generations ago, that really wasn't always a guarantee. Now, here's a family story that we produced out at the Ag Museum a few years ago about one of those Christmases long ago when presents under the tree weren't such a sure thing. A long time ago, back when I was a youngster, we were at my grandmother's house one Christmas, and we were sitting around the dining room table one night after we'd finished eating and the old folks were telling stories. And my oldest uncle said that he wanted to tell us a Christmas story that had happened to him. It was back during the Great Depression. He said he was a young man with a couple of Christmas-aged children, and it had been a tough year. Times were hard for everybody, and it was Christmas Eve. and he had nothing to put under the tree for the kids. And it wasn't because he hadn't tried. There was just nothing. There was no work. There was nothing left for them to sell. And it was getting dark. Now, he had a little money in his pocket, but he was going to have to spend that to buy some flowers so they could have some supper that night. So he walked down to the little store just before the storekeeper was closing up. So my uncle waited his turn in line and ended up being the last customer. He paid for his flour, and he was starting to leave when the storekeeper called him by name and stopped him and grabbed what was left of a crate of oranges. And he told my uncle that he had been such a real good customer that year and that those oranges were just ruined since nobody had bought them by now. So why didn't he take them and put them along with whatever else he was going to give the kids under the tree for Christmas? Of course, those oranges were what he was going to give the kids for Christmas. Now remember, this was a time when oranges and candy was a pretty good gift to find under the tree on Christmas morning. So my uncle's point, here he was empty-handed and empty-pocketed on Christmas Eve during the Great Depression, when all of a sudden a last-minute Christmas miracle supplied him with everything he needed to make it a Merry Christmas morning for the kids next day. Well, up until now, I thought the point of the story was Christmas miracles can happen. And I suppose they do. I'm sure we've all heard of something like what happened to my uncle. But then not long ago, it occurred to me that the greater point of the story is not how we could occasionally get a miracle, but how that storekeeper became a Christmas miracle. And getting a miracle, that's left so much up to chance. But providing a miracle, now, we've got all the control in the world over that. Pay for a stranger's meal in the car behind you at the drive-up window. You could do that. And you know, a kind word just for the heck of it doesn't hurt a bit, even to somebody who doesn't seem down. Or actually making a contribution to a homeless shelter for meals. Or giving somebody the equivalent of the rest of that box of oranges like that storekeeper did for my uncle, even if you didn't know they needed them. Aren't you glad they came up with something for Christmas morning? Don't you wish I hadn't put it that way? I'm sorry. Are electric trains still a thing for Christmas? My brother and I got one year. But if you like trains, look around and you can find a set on display for the holiday somewhere, like this set at the two Mississippi museums. Interesting. One of the decorating elements at the governor's mansion, the train sets. They've been closely associated with Christmas since they started making toy trains, I guess. Ever wonder why? Well, the first mass-produced toy trains were made by a German dollhouse manufacturer in the late 1800s who wanted a product aimed at boys like their dollhouses were at girls, and something they could add accessories to and sell along after the original purchase. Then around 1900, American electric toy maker Lionel tried their luck at making electric trains. Now, you know, kids at that time would have been much more familiar with trains than they would have been cars. Remember, Henry Ford didn't even start his assembly line process until 1903 and didn't make the Model T until 1908. Maybe the closely knit association of electric trains to Christmas came about because also, at the turn of the 20th century, people took trips by train. Christmas trips to Grandma's house. Plus, electric trains weren't cheap. And then, as with now, expensive presents were relegated to Christmas. And it became natural to set up the new train under the Christmas tree on Christmas morning. And it usually stayed there well past the expiration date of the tree until Mom needed that corner of the living room back again. And away went the train set back in the box until maybe the next Thanksgiving, when it was hauled out and reassembled as a precursor to Christmas. But seriously, what's the fascination with an electric train? I mean, it just goes in circles under the tree. Well, unless you also maybe build a little village at one bend of the track, perhaps put a farm out there somewhere, maybe a factory somewhere along the way, and then maybe construct a tunnel for the train to run through between all of them, and add more track and turn the circle into a figure eight, and add some switches and sidings. But then, the main element to making an electric train really functional becomes imagination. Not only have it go in circles, but have it go somewhere, a destination. In your mind, yes, but it went somewhere. You name the town, like the one where this train set runs at the Mississippi 2 Museums, Possum Ridge. And in your imagination, there are people here, doing something, and they need that train to make it work. My older brother and I got an electric train one year. Well, us and Daddy. But as childhood went away, the train seemed to evaporate. A few years later, you might run across a piece of the track in the floor of a closet or a boxcar still in a toy box. And then I have no recollection of what happened to it. But I've heard that electric trains are making a comeback with children nowadays, with the popularity of trains in their stories like Polar Express, and of course the Hogwarts Express and Harry Potter, things like that. I Googled them. There are plenty of electric train sets for sale at the big box stores and on eBay and online toy stores, and they're still expensive, to me anyway. But no matter how elaborate the train sets are and what accessories they come with or what you can buy and add on later, they still just go around in circles, without the same element that powered that first line L. Imagination. Imagination, and a dash of wonder. Also, the major ingredients that make Christmas go around. Hey, we're just about out of time, but over the past 5 years, we've visited a few Christmas pageants and live nativity scenes and collected video of them, which comes in handy if you want to do a story about the Christmas story, citing the lack of news or video clips from that first Christmas. So for this story, we borrow shots from a few years back from the Inverness Interdenominational Christmas Celebration. That's where all the churches in downtown Inverness sort of each take a segment of the Christmas story and tell it at their church. And the whole town acts out all the events of that first Christmas. So we leave you with this, and we bid you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Well, we have one more story to tell you before we leave, and it's not just a Christmas story, but the Christmas story. This is one that'll be told around Christmas trees and fireplaces and dinner tables millions of times over in the coming days. It's from the book of Luke in the New Testament. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you, ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.